welcome back to another episode of Antiformal. In upcoming Pick and Hammer Club events, we will be having our next mineral auction on Monday, November 29th, and it is likely going to take place in the Union, so be on the eye for that. On Tuesday, November 30th at 9 a.m., we will be helping Dr. Molly Younger with OGS prepare some gift bag. We will need 2 to 4 volunteers for Tuesday, November 30th. And then Thursday, December 2nd, Pick and Hammer will be having a movie night at 6 p.m. in P111. And our last event for the semester will be another geology office hours. Again, this is with Dr. Molly Younger at OGS, and it's going to be in the same room where we were last time if you volunteered with us. And if you didn't make it out last time, this is a great opportunity to meet some local folks and see some cool rocks. The mineral of the day is selenite. So, fun fact about selenite is it's kind of Pick and Hammer's mascot mineral. When I was a sophomore and I went to Tucson, an older officer, his name was Pete, he came running up to the group and he was like, guys, I found a huge deal. And we were like, what? Okay. And he came up and he was carrying a cardboard wrapping that was in both of his arms. It was taking up a huge amount of space, and he was like, I paid $13 for this. We were like, what? So we went over there, and sure enough, they had huge just blocks of selenite, and you could buy them by the kilogram. So I got one that's as big as my forearm and is probably like that big around, and I only paid $7 for it. So Pick and Hammer loves to buy selenite because we get excellent deals on it, and it's really, really cool. Some of the biggest crystals ever found were composed of selenite. It's a variety of gypsum, so it's composed of calcium sulfate and H2O, but it's 2H2O in the chemical formula, so it's referred to as dihydrate. And selenite can be recognized by its thick, fibrous fracture habit, and it is also really low on Mohs hardness scale, so it can be scratched with your finger. Very soft rock. The name selenite comes from the Greek goddess of the moon, Selene. It literally translates to stone of the moon, but that is not to be confused with the moonstone that is a feldspar on the albite orthoclase feldspar series. Some common industrial uses of selenite, or gypsum in general, are paints, tile, drywall, blackboard, chalk, fertilizer, and plaster of Paris. So it's really handy in constructing things. And you can also see the fibers. Pretty much all of these specimens are going to look the same, but I will show you a few just to give you a little variety. Maybe we can accent this reflective property if I change the color of the light. Oh yeah. That's brighter, right? So that was mineral of the day, selenite, Pick and Hammer's favorite mineral. And now we will hear from Pick and Hammer's Vice President, Chris Bojack. Have our very special guest.
How you doing? I'm Chris Bojack. I'm a VP of Pick and Hammer. I'm also a VP of the GIS Club. So, yeah, Brent, it's good to be here.
Yeah. How do you manage being vice president of 2 clubs?
Well, we've had a lot of transition in the GIS Club lately, which is really kind of an interesting fact. What they're looking to do more outreach events. So basically, when it came down to it, we had a new president come in. She was interested in doing the Science Olympiad with us. And, you know, being VP for this is basically not so much micromanaging, just making sure that you make the right connections for people so that they can do their job.
Okay. Or do you run into any conflicts of time?
Oh, all the time.
All the time?
Yeah, everything. And so being in 2 different degree programs, you run into conflicts between basically your time management. You have to be able to work while going to school, but you can't work too much because you can't get your schoolwork done. And then doing the clubs on the side of that, you got to manage your personal time. So I'm in a club that's outside of school, and I'm also, doing these two clubs academically. So there's not a lot of alone time. There's
Okay.
not a lot of time without being around somebody or
Yeah.
interacting with somebody in some way on campus.
Okay. What club are you a part of that's off campus?
I do jujitsu at Sooner
Oh,
Judo. Yeah, so
Okay.
it's part of. We're affiliated with the Kavakanchi, and he is out of Vegas right now. And then Primitive Sports Jiu-Jitsu, which is Aaron Alexander's gym, practices at Sooner Judo Club here in Norman. They're off of Porter and Indian Hills Road. So
Okay.
we do that 3 times a week. It's a great physical exercise. Keeps you, mentally there too. Gives you a relief, so you're not thinking about so much school stuff when you're exercising like that.
Well, yeah, that's definitely something that requires a lot of focus. Otherwise, you might get bopped.
Yeah, sometimes that happens even when you're focusing. But yeah, it's an extraneous sport. You got to really be involved, and you have to focus on what you're doing physically. So it leaves your mind, a lot of time to relax. Like you're not thinking about what you're doing that day or doing, for your club or for anything else, because you have to be focused on in the moment. But then when you're out of that, you feel this sense of relief, and there's enough, I guess, the adrenaline's worn off, and now you're into like dopamine, and so you're sitting there relaxed and you're excited. And now, when I come back at about 8:30 or so at night, I sit down and I start my homework, and I'm not tense. I'm not, oh my God, I gotta get this in for the day. It's okay, just relax, time to get things done.
Yeah.
So it's a good break between, the monotony of the everyday life where you're running between classes and clubs and meetings and going to, internships and or work or whatever you have to do. So
Yeah.
break up the day with some exercise is good.
Yeah. That is really good. You said 2 degree programs. Would you care to explain a little bit about that?
Sure. So the GIS program through the Atmospheric and Geographic Science school here, the college for that, had opened up a dual enrollment, so an accelerated program into your graduate's degree. And so if you want to get your master's degree in something relative to GIS, you can apply for the accelerated program in regional city planning, which integrates the GIS programming for analysis for future predictions of populations, of like the needs of your city for your infrastructure. Like if you're going to put in a new hotel, you have to know how much water is going to be used by the sewer, how much you're going to need for new influx, how much people are going to be drinking per day per room. If you have to kind of give a example of how many people are going to be in the hotel per day. What about a holiday or Super Bowl, something like that? If somebody's going to put up a stadium, so it's really nice to have an integration between the two programs. And so when they did that, it allowed me to get into a master's program while I was currently working on my bachelor's in GIS. And so the School of Architecture is where you get the regional city planning degree from.
Okay.
So integrating between 2 colleges, and it helps out both colleges because both programs were looking to get their students into a higher degree level program.
Okay, very nice. And with that, you've done specifically research on geothermal, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of my passion is basically growing up skiing and stuff. It was a lot of, okay, you're done for the day, let's go to the hot springs. And so, hot springs are free. They're a lot of fun. Anybody can go. It's usually close enough to a hotel or a resort to where you could just drive out with your car. And that really, as a little kid, drove me to want to work with that energy, like figure out what it was that makes this. And, the tectonic plate energy and the volcanic energy, that basically all that geothermal energy that's under the ground can be harnessed. And right now we're looking at all these different intermittent ways to create renewable energy, like wind and solar, which are great sources of storage of energy once you get them powered. But the reason I say intermittent is because, there's not always wind, there's not always sun, we have nighttime. And so yes, you can store these, energies with a battery, but for like housing complexes and stuff like that, that's going to utilize a lot of energy, like a subdivision or even a remote location like a hotel or something like that, you're going to utilize a lot of energy, consistent energy. So when I came here, I saw Professor Collard for the Regional City Planning program. He works with the Potawatomi Nation. He is the city manager for Shawnee, and he has worked with the fire Lake Casino and basically the Fire Lake project that supports the heating and cooling of the casino, the grocery store, the medical facilities, and the retirement communities. So all of this is powered by the geothermal energy of the lake, and it's not even a deep thermal drill either. So, having that accessibility even out here in Oklahoma says a lot about how you can produce energy from the ground consistently. So if you look at places like New Zealand, they're 86% run by geothermal energy, like the entire country. So
I did not know that.
yeah, so if you think about they're creating from small scale to large scale. So you have power plant size locations that are harnessing geothermal energy, and the only output is steam.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot less harmful carbon, a lot less harmful energy, and pollutants going into the air.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big deal.
And you said that the one at Fire Lake is not very deep.
No, they have enough residual heat coming up that they drilled, I believe it was like 13 feet down, and they have coils of copper going up into a condenser near their building, which compresses the steam that's in the tubes, forcing it through basically a generator, turning a turbine of some sorts, and creating electricity through that. They also have the forced heated water that's through there running through their grocery stores and the lines through their buildings and stuff like that to keep the heating and cooling at an energy efficient, system.
Wow.
So yeah, you can have like 73 degrees year round without ever, hitting the power grid.
Are you familiar with green engineering?
Yeah, I mean, there's green engineering, and then there's green planning. There's basically it has to do with the whole Green New Deal.
Yeah.
So the Green New Deal came out and basically saying that there's going to be a lot of government subsidies and stuff like that that'll help our infrastructure for renewing places such as like brownfields where there was like an old gas station. Well, you can't really use that and turn it into a living space until you remove all the pollutants from the area. So the government will help you pay for all of that. There's a couple of places. I think the co-op up in Oklahoma City was actually an old gas station that used government funding to basically take out the old tanks, clean up the dirt in the area, repave it, and they turned the whole place into a nice restaurant. It's 2 floors. There's tabletop seating upstairs on the rooftop. It's pretty cool.
That is really cool.
So there's been a lot of renewal projects like that in OKC and other cities. There's been a bounce back from what used to be seen as urban renewal, which in the 1920s through the 1950s was a big deal. They were turning, over areas that they thought would be renewed. So they would take down these areas that they thought were slums, and they would displace people to a certain extent in the hopes of recreating a new, better location. And it didn't really happen. A lot of places got torn down. They didn't really get rebuilt. So now there's a lot of urban renewal projects that are going on that are more green based.
Okay.
And so they're trying to create the interaction between space and nature, which is really nice. And it has to do a lot with the Scissortail Park that just went up near the Omni Hotel too, up at OKC, because that came in through the MAPS tax program, which is basically taxes in a way, if you look at it, are your ticket to live in the area that you want to. Basically, you're paying those taxes for the amenities of your location. So, you pay federal taxes to live in the U.S., you pay city and county taxes, which basically end up being, your state taxes, revenue, that kind of thing. And they get dispersed to your area based on, the allotment of what your assessors are. So like 57% of the county's tax income from your properties, they come to the school systems, like the public schools and all that.
Okay.
So it's a really good turnover of events. Like, if you have a program that's based on renewing energy and renewing green energy, that kind of stuff, then you get government subsidies. It doesn't take such a hard hit on everything else. So when you're trying to create a new program, it can take money away from old programs, or you have to alter and shift, figure out where it comes from.
Yeah.
So with the new deal that they have out, the government subsidies helps provide the transition of these places that were formerly run down to places that could now be accessed by, anybody. You could turn it, from like what we talked about, a restaurant, you could turn it into a retail store. There's a couple of gas stations that I saw that were off of 23rd. They got turned into basic supermarkets, like, but they're local. Like, there was I forget the name of it, but it was like an Indian mart with all the native, not Native American Indians, but like the native Indian foods from India. So it was pretty neat to see the transition. It was all just painted up, and there were food trucks on the side from like their local, food. It was pretty neat.
That is really neat. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't talk about what you did before coming to OU, because you'd have experience before you got into like the GIS program here, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, the first time around, I wasn't concentrated so much at college as I was skiing. I went to University of Utah. I was going for a Bachelor's of Fine Arts. I finished almost all the requirements. I had 120 something credit hours completed, and decided that it wasn't my path. I ended up with a job working for a friend of a friend. Their father gave me a job. I actually broke down in South Dakota, of all things, and was on the side of the highway for about 5 hours or so. And just happenstance, a friend of a friend's father was working in Pierre, the state capital, and drove down from the state capitol with a trailer, and we pushed my car onto the trailer and drove up there, and sold my car for $1 because apparently,
oh my gosh.
yeah, the piston wedged its way sideways in the engine, and the coolant line was broken, so it was just stuck on good.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
didn't say cold or hot or anything. So yeah, the engine kind of blew, and I got a job with oil and gas companies doing research from there because they stuck me in a courthouse the next day and said, you can work your way for a bus ticket home. So that's what I did. And it pretty much, I'd love to say the rest was history, but no, I went back to school for a little bit after that for, about 6 months or so, and then decided I was making good enough money to where I could just follow these crews of oil and gas companies, not really knowing what I was getting into, and bounced around the country doing oil and gas research, which got me into geographic information systems and ultimately led me here. But it came down to moving from there to Texas. From when I got back from Pierre, South Dakota, I was back in Utah, and then I moved to Texas. Was there for about 6 years. I worked for companies like Anadarko, XTO, Chesapeake, Shell, kind of like all the subsidiaries of them would hire brokers. So they hire a variety of people that are representing their research, and I would work for them and do their GIS mapping. I would show where people were completed their research, where they were working on it, like what status it was by color coding things at different layers, and then putting up like where we could go drilling wise, where we had access to, so we wouldn't have a mineral trespass. So we have depth severances, including mineral severances along pieces of property. And stuff that's the most confusing was back in the 1920s, you'd go to San Antonio and buy a piece of property in San Antonio, and they're like, here's a deed to 10 acres in the middle of nowhere, about 45 minutes car ride south of here, so that's probably 2.5, 3 hours horse ride, down that way, and they just gave people those 10 acres. Well, if they had kids or whatever, and those kids had kids and they disappeared around the country, now you've got these 10-acre spots that are in the middle of people's, farmland that you can't drill through to access oil or gas or whatever they're trying to drill through, because there'd be a mineral trespass on whoever's kid that they haven't found yet.
Yeah.
And if they come out and say, this is my property, then you have a mineral trespass and they could sue.
Yeah. That's
so,
bad. That's real bad.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want that. So, we had to make sure that we were putting things in the right direction and had, the right locations for, the property ownership. So we had to be within about a foot or so. And that's what GIS is good for, is accurate spatial location. So getting into that further, I would just track leases, so where we were good to go on property for surface wise, and we could send people out for surveys and stuff like that. So I've worked a lot of different various random jobs, and when the market crashed, I worked at Mattress Firm for a little bit, of all places. Nice. Yeah, so you got to learn a new skill somehow. So I went into like doing a little bit of sales and a little bit of retail, and it's like, all right, I can feel high school coming back again. So
did you become a mattress expert?
No, but I'd like to say I can pick out my own mattress now with ease, so
Very
that's
nice.
good.
You got something from it.
You got something from it, and I know the game now, so I don't get ripped off. So that's always nice. But yeah, after that I did title work for a company called Alliance Title. Was out in Idaho. Basically, when I went out to the last job that I had, or the second to last job I had in oil and gas, was out in Idaho. Well, the market dipped again, and the project ended. And so I decided I wanted to work for a title company, which is basically they do research before you get your mortgage on your house. It has to go through a title curing process, basically. So I did title research for that company for a while. I tested through title officer 1, 2, and 3. Or no, sorry, title assistant 1, 2, and 3. And I was going to train for a title officer job when I got an offer to work for an oil and gas company down here.
Okay.
But it was more of a mineral research company than oil and gas. But to anybody else who doesn't understand the differences, it's oil and gas.
Yeah.
So it was a really good project to be on. I was local here, and then I ended up coming back to OU when that project slowed down. And I was unable to find another job in GIS, not having a degree. So it's like your experience can count for so much, but you also have to have proof that you can do the job. So like you could have such a finite experience in your education for this program or this thing that you do that you don't understand the rest of what happens with it. Whereas when you go to school, you get a variety of experiences and theories on how these things are used. And it's a really nice transition between work and school to come back when you're, in your 30s, like I am, and you want to be able to understand both sides of things. Like you see what it's like and how people utilize things in the business world. And everybody always thinks, oh my God, the business world is always 2 years behind on technology. A lot of times they just stick with what works. And if it works and they can create their process and make money, why would they transfer to the new thing unless they absolutely needed to? So if you have a computer program that's like a 5.1 and you go to school and everybody's on 25.7 or whatever, they're still way behind, but their process has been making them money for that long.
Yeah.
So the transition of, yes, you can do new exciting things, however, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's kind of some of the stuff you learn when you come back, and it's a different world because you enter into all the popularity stuff when you look at kids, and I say kids, but you're adults, you're all adults, but you look at people of the ages of like 18 to 26, and you're looking at it from a 10-year out perspective. So you figure you guys are almost 10 years out of high school, right? And yeah,
I'm almost 4 years out of high school.
Well, 4 years, yeah. You guys are early out of high school. Yeah, that's true. So a lot of people wait a year or two up in New England too to go to college.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who take a year off.
Oh,
and
okay.
So that happens too. But yeah, I keep forgetting that everybody didn't take the long route. So yeah, my degree path, I guess I switched majors a few times when I was in Utah, and so it would have taken me probably 5.5 years to graduate. Which is not that uncommon from what I hear, 5.5, 6 years.
Yeah, I don't think that's uncommon at all. It's like, we're not kids, but like the popularity stuff, like that is very real.
Yeah, exactly. Kids talk about, like little cliques and popularity stuff that they have and they know is going on in school. And right now, I could just care less about any of that stuff. I'm like, I just want to get my classes done, make enough money to pay my bills so that I can stay in the apartment that I'm in, and then move to the next step. That's it. Once you graduate, so graduation in the spring is going to be, because of the accelerated program, both the degrees, which will be really nice. And then I'm looking into PhD programs to see what the next step is, to see if I can integrate, GIS planning and geothermal energy somehow into a PhD program to do some research and possibly, do some work in the field later on how to locate, the best ideal locations for a certain type of geothermal usage. So
it's going to be so applicable going forward because, I mean, I didn't know New Zealand was, you said 86%. That's crazy.
Running geothermal, like that is uncanny. Like for an island that size, their population runs on 86% geothermal energy.
And get as much energy as we already do out of the one that's only 13 feet deep.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's not just used for electricity. That's the best part.
Yeah.
It's the one that we use it for here in Shawnee at the Fire Lake project is basically run off of copper tubes and compressed pipes, but you run hot and cold water through that, then, you're basically controlling the thermal area of your household. So like you're controlling the heat and cooling as well, where you would normally have, an AC unit that would be, run by electricity and you have to turn on, turn off. And I'm sure that there's some connection to a unit in itself, but it can't be nearly as expensive as running what we currently do. And the fact that they can be off a grid so that you can use the power plants for what they were initially designed for, is powering a city. And you don't have to worry about powering all these extraneous little pieces of a city as it spreads or grows. You could utilize individual geothermal energy, control units and have locations outside the city that are just controlled by that, so it's not pulling power or strain on the grid.
Yeah, that is, yeah. That's what made me want to bring up the green engineering, is because what you were saying about the heating and cooling, like, because it would require an entire other appliance. Another thing, like with the heating and cooling, is there's a lot of research right now on types of plants to plant on top or on the sides of buildings that help insulate it.
Yep.
I think that's really interesting.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
you can combine that with your geothermal, and then you just 100%. Have like, there's much more efficient city network.
Oh yeah.
So.
And they create their own little ecosystems too. I don't know if you've read any more on that besides they grow plants up the sides of buildings, but like birds and stuff go in and live there and everything, and they create like an actual cooled tropical center between the building and the plants, so there's enough steam in there so it can.
So there's like a space.
Yeah, there's a space so that the invasive species don't reach out and grow into the cement and stuff. They don't break it down.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of plants that are like vines and stuff that'll break down cement over time.
Yeah.
And like then it'll kill the structure of the building. You know, like the whole everything that holds it together. You know, it's probably not good. So usually what they do is they put a iron, like, I want to say iron, but it could be steel or fence, like, you know, a foot or so off the building. So they'll drill it into the building, and there'll be a post sticking out, and that's what they grow on the fence that's on the post sticking out.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool how it creates like a little bit of a steam area too, like on hot days and everything. And like birds love that tropical stuff. So it's possible that, you know, that could be host of, you know, new birds and new, you know, tropical areas for cities, because, you know, if you're thinking we're technically tearing down forests and livable space for those animals.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be kind of neat to involve that in more, you know, urban design stuff too.
Yeah, that would be good. Have the ecosystem take back over.
Right, exactly. That's the whole point of like integrating all these clubs and everything too. Is making sure that everybody's communicating and talking together, because if we're not, you know, we're all sitting in our own little cubby holes coming up with our ideas, but nobody's listening either.
Yes, exactly. Like without the collaboration, your ideas don't get to go as far.
Exactly.
And it's easy to snowball off people, and I'm a big group worker. I know you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Makes it great to work, you know, with a bunch of people and go out to these events too.
Yeah.
You know, that whole process of meeting people and stuff. You like to talk as well, so it's like, you know, meeting people and getting people involved in what we do is also involving us in what they do.
Mm-hmm.
It makes us more, you know, engaged. So.
Absolutely, I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all of the formal questions I have. Would you like to crack a geode and talk about this?
Let's do this.
All right. So what are we looking at?
This is our outreach tool. It's our geode cracker. We created it from an underground pipe cutter, which is this piece here, and this nice chain. If you know what a pipe cutter looks like when you're in like shop class or any of that kind of stuff, basically it has 2 to 3 round clamping teeth on the inside. That's these here.
Okay.
Right? So those create a fine point of contact all the way around the geode.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're trying to crack a geode, you don't want to smash it completely with a hammer, although that is one way to do it. What we're trying to do is create a clean break. So in order to get this to work, you would wrap this like you would wrap it around a pipe. So it has to be tight. Okay, let's start that part over again. So it has to be tight to create the link. And once the link is there and it has an even pressure point all the way around, it'll stabilize and sit in the chain. Now these teeth are clamping down at the same point all the way around the geode. So that will make an even and clean break. So once that's down, and we can hear it just cracking a little bit there, this is what helps us crack the geode with ease. So we can have elementary school, kindergartners, even preschoolers could pull this thing, and they could crack a geode on their own. And it comes down to just pulling the lever and making sure that this part is still spinning. That means it's tightening the entire time we're doing it.
I hear it.
It's getting there. Here we go.
Woo!
And we cracked. So let's see what we got.
Ooh. So where did these geodes come from?
So these ones came from Rocks for Socks. They donate a percentage of their profits to homeless people without socks. So they were nice enough to reach out to us. We do a lot of outreach events with kids in schools all over Oklahoma, and they gave us a nice little thank you letter, and we wanted to say thank you to them by showing how we use their geos that they donated to us to reach kids in Oklahoma how to be geoscientists in the future, and how much fun geology can be.
And they have cute little stickers.
And they have great stickers. They really do. They sent us a bunch of stickers we're handing out at our outreach events too. So thank you very much to Rocks for Socks.
Thank you. Because these are elevated.
Yeah.
That's why they get the same point. Very nice. Okay.
Oh my God. Every time I go to the bar, they're like, "You're at least 30." I'm like, "I'll take it."